On a cruise ship, we travel the Baltic Sea, along routes that have connected the cultures of the region since ancient times. A journey of discovery in the extraordinary light of a short Nordic summer. On the fourth leg of our tour, we visit a builder of traditional wooden boats. Specialists for high-tech robots. People who tap the treasures of nature. And others who delight in their cultural heritage. Our tour once around the Baltic Sea takes us from Sweden to Finland, then on to St. Petersburg, and all the way to the Baltic countries. Today, the cruise ship will arrive in Tallinn. From there, excursions will take us to the swamplands near Suomi, over to the islands Saaremaa and Hiiumaa, and then back to the mainland, to Tallinn. The Baltic Sea is not immune to bouts of bad weather. Captain Sven Gatner had to choose an alternative route. With gale winds of up to force 10, the big ship had begun to pitch and lurch in the rough seas. The pilot vessel could barely land, but the crew on the bridge was in their element.
18? 18. She's coming out?
Yes, it's coming out, yeah. This one.
It really makes you realize how small we are in the face of nature, when we're obstructed by wind or the currents or bad weather, when we have to adapt to nature, not nature to us. There are times when you simply have to work with wind and waves and other vagaries. But that's what's so interesting. As the captain, you're there to overcome challenges after all. When everything is calm, it gets monotonous. Things liven up when you run into unforeseeable situations and then have to respond to them. That's when it gets fun. That's what you call a navigational treat, back to the roots, when you can really say, we're seafarers. But by the time we were nearing land, the seagulls were already with us. The weather had calmed right down. At 15 knots, about 28 kilometers per hour, the giant ocean liner nears the shores of Estonia. On board, almost 400 crew members and 1,200 passengers. 8 hours of shore leave are scheduled for this stop. While the passengers approach the port, the day in Estonia is already well underway. Early morning at the Tallinn University of Technology. Asko and Rosa are busy testing the model for a prototype in the aquarium of the Center for Biorobotics, a robot that will at some stage be let loose in the waters of the Baltic Sea.
Oh, tere Aivar! Päris hea luisk. On. Ma toon sulle teise veel äkki, vaata, see töötab äkki sulle paremini.
100 kilometers further inland, in the swamplands of Suomi, before they start work, Aiva and Eric prepare the tools needed to manufacture a special mode of transport, still used in the region, especially in floodwaters.
Tänase päeva töö saab olema.
Seest tühjaks, jah?
Tänase päeva töö seest tühjaks.
Back on the cruise ship. preparations for the docking maneuver are underway. Passengers are not allowed onto Deck 4, the mooring station. Only crew and sailors schooled in the handling of anchor chains and heavy ropes have access. From here, the motorized winches pull taut the thick ropes used to secure the ship to the wharf bollards.
Yes, this is a very risky situation. So that's why when the guys come in this area, so we have to wear helmet, gloves, safety shoes, coverall. We have to be careful of what we're doing inside the mooring station.
As soon as the cruise ship nears the quay bulkhead, everything goes very quickly.
The dangerous part is when your hands stuck between the lines and the rulers, so for sure your hands will be cut. And when the lines is broke, it will sweep you away. You're so lucky if you got fractured, but the worst thing, I cannot imagine.
The moment of truth comes when the big tub, with its thousands of tons of weight, pulls on the taut ropes. Should they snap, they'd smite everyone in reach. One reason the crew keeps all passengers off the quay until the ship is completely secured. Tallinn is famous for its long history as a trading hub, also known for a medieval old town with narrow lanes.
Enter your team name here.
Yet nowadays, the former Hanseatic League city shows itself with a fresh face, young and dynamic, wide open for all things modern and technologically advanced.
Yes.
So, the first passengers to go ashore for the day's excursion were in for something completely different.
Checkpoint. The tablet will guide you there. You can
Equipped with specially programmed tablets, they were off on a sort of walking rally, answering quiz questions while moving around the historical city center.
So, ready, steady, go.
High-tech meets tradition. Here, the past and the present are cheek by jowl. From our cutting-edge 21st century mode of transport at the wharf, it's just a few steps to the historical heart of Tallinn. Aided by digital technology, a geo-tracker, the walking tour is all about the city's history. The tablet pinpoints the location of the participants and leads them to the points of interest. And it gives homework. Visitors are prompted to find out the answers to questions, research background info, take pictures. The first question: what form of communication did the sentinels guarding the city wall use? Loud calls, horns, and
Und Flagge.
flags.
Versenden?
Ja.
Ah,
Auf jeden
richtig.
Fall.
Bit by bit, the travelers thus explore the lower town with its largely intact rampart and learn a good deal about the trade center, formerly called Reval, about the Hansa and their wealth. It's a windy day, not uncommon in the port of Tallinn, where the weather changes quickly. That goes for sunshine, as well as sudden rain showers. Between old warehouses and the premises of the former guilds and trades stand the Three Sisters, houses that a rich merchant built for his daughters over 500 years ago. At the end of the Pick, a street that in the Middle Ages went all the way down to the port, sits Fat Margaret, a rotund cannon tower meant to impress upon passing ships that this was a powerful fortified city. In the center of the lower city, Right in front of the old town hall with its high tower, the next task now awaits Team Cruise Ship. The olde Hansa serves authentic medieval dishes. On today's menu, millet porridge, and, more a product of the late Middle Ages, burnt sugar almonds.
Oh, we can make a selfie. We can make a selfie.
Super.
The market square was once the venue for festive events held by the mercantile guilds. Since the 14th century, the government has resided here, and way up in the town hall tower hangs the oldest bell in the Baltic. Its ring was not a good sign. It was sounded when the city was on fire. Right opposite the town hall stands what is likely the oldest still operative pharmacy in Northern Europe. Our quiz candidates ponder the next question. Where was marzipan invented?
Tallinn or Lübeck?
In Tallinn or Lübeck? I'd say Lübeck.
I'd say so too.
Wrong. Of course they should have guessed. Tallinn. Other sources credit Venice with the innovation, or the Arab world, but this pharmacy was verifiably selling the sweet treat 500 years ago as a medicine. Back to the coast. Tallinn was once an important transshipment point for goods from the west destined for Russia and vice versa. In the days of the Hanseatic League, the freight from incoming ships was temporarily warehoused right at the docks. But there's not much left of the old trading port. Next to the ultra-modern facilities, mainly stations for ferries to Helsinki 80 kilometers away, there's a small and relatively quiet area with boats from the last century. Engineer Asko Ristolainen has come here together with his students from the Tallinn University of Technology to test their newly developed underwater robot, UCAT. In recent years, little Estonia, especially the capital Tallinn, has become one of the world's leading centers of technology.
So, Jan, just let it go.
Some are already calling it Europe's Silicon Valley. The idea for UCAT came when archaeologists approached us because they wanted a robot to help them access sunken vessels and shipwrecks that could move around in especially tight spaces. In developing their design, the engineers looked to nature for insight. The UCAT is inspired by the tortoise. We're a robotics laboratory that uses biological models, which is why we wanted to imitate an animal and settled on the tortoise. We implemented the idea of fins instead of propellers because fins have advantages. They don't stir up mud from the seabed. This robot can move more fluidly and quietly underwater, and thanks to its fins, can spin on a dime and move from any position in any direction. We can also use these robots in places that would be too dangerous for divers, such as tight spaces where divers can get stuck or get caught in a trap. There are many creative startups for software development here. Skype was in fact invented in Tallinn. Engineer Asko also enjoys the benefits of the digital boom in his daily life. In Estonia, the new digital technologies are already in widespread practical use. We have here what we call an e-state, e-Estonia, an electronic state. Many of our everyday tasks, banking, signing contracts, are now only a few taps on the keyboard away. We can submit a digital signature. Banking needs are easy to meet electronically. It takes just 5 minutes to submit our e-tax return. So I think Estonia is very advanced as far as electronic progress goes. the E-idea.
jah, ma arvan, et Eesti on nagu väga selline arenenud e-mõttes.
While the passengers explore the city, the crew uses the laytime in port to get everything on board up to snuff. There are parts of the ship that get no attention during the voyage. Denisias is bosun, which means he's not only the chief sailor, but also the one to ensure that even after 15 years in service, everything on the ship is operative. His main adversary? Salt water.
So this is what we're gonna do. Every day, we have to encounter the rust. We have to prevent the rust from eating our own ship. So we have to maintain it, derusting, remove the rust, and we do the painting so that it's more presentable. It looks nice with the guest, and the guest can come because the ship is nice, the people, and it will maintain. When it's well maintained, it means save for the company, more money come, ship's nice, crew is healthy, maintenance is good.
Coming from the Gulf of Finland, we first entered Tallinn Bay. In addition to city sightseeing, nearby countryside destinations make a great day trip. Travelers with more time to spare can take an excursion to the wetlands near Suomaa in the south, and then onto the river Keila. Just under 2 hours' drive from Tallinn, far from the technology parks and the dynamic big city buzz, lies another Estonia, the Suomaa National Park, a vast moorland. In this peat bog, you're well advised to stay on the wooden walkways. The boggy earth is hungry, the locals say, and if you leave the paths, you'll quickly lose your way. Horror stories abound of hikers stumbling into the moor and unable to free themselves, being swallowed up by the peat. Their ghosts are said to now haunt the moor. This area is even less accessible when, after the long winter, the snow and ice melt. Then some streams become rushing rivers, flooding streets, forests, and trails. And the way to get around is with a wooden boat called a harbour. Such dugout canoes have been made here by hand for hundreds of years. It takes almost a month to make with two of us working together, at least 8 hours a day. It starts with choosing a tree and taking it home. But you have to take your time to make sure you find the right trunk. Then you shape the outer form, dig out the inside with a pickaxe. Finally, you stretch, drive the sides apart. All told, a full month's work for two men. In every tree there is a soul, not in the material but in the wood as it was still growing. It did live its own life for 70 or 80 years after all. And then we felled it, and now it will become a boat, and perhaps the soul of the tree will live on in this boat. At this stage, it's still a half a meter wide, because the tree measured 50 centimeters in diameter. But the finished harbour needs to be a meter wide. These outer walls will be stretched to give it the actual boat shape. For that, we fill it with water, and light a fire underneath. And while it's heated, we spend half a day pushing the two sides apart with alder branches. That's how a pipe-like structure becomes a boat-shaped watercraft.
Siis sõiduk. Puhata.
Aiva Ruukul tells us how every year the floodwaters suddenly come overnight, how otherwise inaccessible swamplands open up, how you can glide with a dugout through untouched primitive forest and observe animals that usually hide away in the undergrowth. Nature, enthused Aiva, suddenly has its own voice. It's as if the trees could speak. Together with friends, Aiva launches his habya and listens to the voice of the wilderness. With them in the boat is Anna Liskma. This young woman is revered for her wisdom and is the one to decide where the lyrics of the old folk songs may be changed and where they should be kept as they are. Together, they strike up a traditional Estonian folk tune. They sing of a river and the tree of life. Human beings make up the trunk, the gods are the branches. I don't go to church very often, but I'm no animist activist either. But I do think there is a deeper connection between nature, the world around us, and us human beings ourselves, just as we are. That we're part of nature, created by it. There are so many wonderful things in nature. Nature itself is actually one big wonder. But I think my perspective is scientific nonetheless, although science can only really explain a small part of nature, including ourselves, human beings. In the traditional Estonian understanding, many plants have a soul. The Christian religion plays virtually no role at all in Estonia. Only about 32% of the population belongs to any faith community at all. Many see Christianity as something forced on them centuries ago, violently, by crusaders with the sword. But many Estonians firmly believe in supernatural powers, in ghosts, nature spirits. They regard trees as holy, and the same goes for rocks, boulders, rivers, and lakes. The small country is mainly flat. The glaciers of the last ice age left behind only a few modest mountains, more like hills of detritus. When the thaw comes after a long snow-rich winter, the water drains off very slowly. Estonia is a very wet place. Boat trips and kayak excursions are on offer on many rivers, heading downstream as a rule, as far as it goes. But sometimes, a sharp downturn puts an abrupt end to every canoe trip. The Keila River waterfall, just a few meters high, but quite broad indeed. Asko and his colleague Jeff Tutan are here to test another robot, a special autonomous measuring instrument.
So the balloons are slowly inflating so they can pass downstream or in the water.
The device is activated with a chip. With an injection of liquid gas, the balloon expands.
And then the fourth and most important step is to say goodbye.
And the electronic bundle is then thrown into the flowing water.
it's good for measuring any environment that's too damn dangerous for people. So I wouldn't want to measure on that waterfall. We also send the sensors through glaciers and hydropower turbines.
After its mission, the device is carefully retrieved with a net. A few meters away, Asko, in the same river, the Keila. Estonia is quite a flat country with many rivers and lakes and a lot of swampland too, so it's quite freshwater rich. Here we're testing a sensor that we use to measure the depth of the river and the speed of the currents. We do these field tests out here in nature to see how good the device holds up under the actual conditions. In a wetland region like Estonia, flow behavior and water quality are existential issues. From Tallinn, our countryside excursion took us first to the Moor country and the nature reserve Suoma. Now we continue on to Saaremaa Island, to Orissaare and Kali, and finally to the neighboring island of Hiiumaa. Saaremaa is easily reached, with ferries regularly shuttling back and forth. But in the winter, the Baltic Sea often freezes over, and ferry service is suspended. Then you just roll your car across the ice. Saaremaa means land of the islands. The numerous little offshore islets are connected by long dams. In the interior of the main island, in the woods near Kali, lies a perfectly round pond. Not very big, but legendary, like so many things in Estonia. One tradition tells of a marriage between siblings, a scandal that caused the earth to open up here in a gaping expression of horror. Another legend has it that a squire lived a debauched life, and when he finally held one notorious orgy too many, the earth exploded. The truth, presumably, lies buried deep down on the lakebed. There is evidence for a completely natural cause of this anomaly. 4,000 years ago, a meteorite weighing tons exploded at an altitude of 10,000 meters. A chunk of it fell to Earth here, making this crater. Right nearby, Angla Tuulikumegi, Angla's Mill Mountain. At one time, there were 800 windmills on the island. And we keep running into these, glacial erratics, a legacy of the Ice Age. Boulders polished by the journey with the ice crust. They've often lain here for millennia. New ones still keep growing out of the ground with the frost. Such erratics, many Estonians believe, must not be moved. It brings misfortune. So they often just stay put in the middle of a farmer's field. Around them grow bushes and trees, which are then often considered holy. On the soccer field in Orissaare, a village of 900 souls. Back in the Soviet era, this was a restricted military area to prevent people from fleeing from here over the Baltic Sea to Finland, only about 100 kilometers away. There aren't enough boys in the village interested in football, but an enthusiastic girls' team does train here. The tree in the middle of the playing field is a great holy oak with a very special history. When during the Soviet occupation they wanted to build a stadium here, even the big tractors and building machinery couldn't manage to extract the 150-year-old giant and its roots from the ground. So there it stayed. And no one now gives a second thought to the extra player near the penalty line. There's a long tradition of forest conservation in Estonia. Deciduous trees especially were not used as building material or firewood. Rather, they were left to form sacred copses. The people believed that gnomes and fairies gathered there and bestowed supernatural powers. Magical powers are also attributed to the products that can be extracted from trees. For Annelies Tyson and her brother Adon, it's birch sap. They tap the birch to get it, although it was now a bit too late in the year. The yield would have been better right after the spring thaw, before the trees are in leaf. Adon bores very carefully. In the holes from the springtime, he finds only moisture, no sap. There's no sap at all now because the tree is fully in leaf and all the water has gone to the crown of the tree. The tree is now slightly moist, like a young sapling, but it's no longer the real growth sap because that's already all gone to the leaves. So now we're just inserting this plug so that no bacteria can get into the tree and cause rot to set in. Grandmother always said, when you wash your hair with birch sap, it'll never fall out.
And it keeps getting longer, as you can see.
And if you use it on your face, you're sure to make a good match because it makes you so beautiful. On the property of their grandmother, where the two grew up, there are many birch trees, like everywhere on Saaremaa. But they have to have reached a certain size and a certain age before they may be juiced. Annelies Tyson did some research and discovered the juice of the birch tree is a wonderful ingredient for soap and lemonade. And you can ferment it to make birch wine, and even birch champagne.
It needs to ferment a bit more yet. It can even get quite a bit more sour. Then it'll be much cloudier as well. Birch sap is an elixir of life. It's full of vitamins and minerals. Back in the days of our ancestors, they used it after the long, dark winter. They always drank it then to reawaken to new life. Just as the birch sap rises in the tree, allowing the birch to bloom and to revive, our forebears too refueled their bodies with vitamins and minerals. From potassium to all sorts of vitamins, it's all in there. Of course, it's not a miracle cure, but it's a very good natural source of vitamins.
Annelies' grandmother still lives on the farm.
Let's just say drinking it is healthy. A remedy? There was a man called Toidu. He came here from Russia with stomach ulcers. He drank the birch water and was cured.
According to the old folks, the birch sap, also called juice or water, cures many things that might ail you. It helps with allergies. It's an anti-inflammatory agent and promotes hair and fingernail growth. A true gift of nature. The biggest town on the island has an eventful history. Kuressaare, also known as Ansborg, conquered by the Teutonic Knights, then by Danes, Swedes, and Russians. It was all about trade, economic power, religion, and political influence. A few kilometers outside of Kuressaare, throughout all the foreign power grabs, despite zealous missionaries and cultural colonization, here the traditional belief in the powers of nature has remained intact, especially when it comes to an extremely robust, low-maintenance bush, equipped to protect itself, if need be, with sharp thorns, the juniper. Older Estonians say you must not break or cut off a twig of juniper without good reason.
In local traditional medicine, juniper is known for its purifying properties. It's used to cleanse the body. It's a diuretic and is good for treating cellulite. It's also said to lower cholesterol, and it's antifungal. In other words, juniper is a real benefit for the human organism.
In other countries, juniper is mainly used to make a popular spirit, gin. The women here use it to spice drinks, bread, fish, and meat, to add flavor to tea, syrup, oil, and jam. The plant of the cypress family thrives here, growing in abundance, especially near the sea. If you come to the coast when the bushes are in bloom, the pungent fragrance blends with the scent of sea breeze.
When we go down to the shore to gather it, we soon look like little green men. Because the juniper plants dust us with their pollen. This is a male plant with so much dust, see? Juniper pollen is very healthy. And all of that is captured in juniper tea and in the syrup.
Siirupi sisse, näed.
You can inhale it. It's good for the health.
See on terviseks.
Liisi Kulfjõgi tells us that, according to the old beliefs, the juniper bush is a place between two worlds, where the souls of the departed rest before moving on to the other side. And for that reason, too, its products are something very special. In the kitchen, the syrup is already cooking on the stove. Young twigs and berries in hot spring water. Later, beet sugar will be added. Then, Liisi starts to prepare something else from the freshly harvested shoots. She selects only the most tender tips, chops them fine, together with other fresh herbs, such as parsley and wild garlic, and blends them with the butter. Some salt, juniper salt. A spread for her mother's homemade bread, fresh from the oven.
No. ma annan sulle proovida siis.
I'll give you some to try. You'll have to season it to taste.
No proovi. Võta see. No.
Good Mac.
Estonian herb butter. Probably especially healthy.
Haluaisid ka totraga?
Pakuks teistele.
Ära hakka.
Further to the northeast, just beyond the Panga cliff, lies the neighboring island of Hiiumaa. Here too, a thick ice sheet covered the island during the last ice age, pressing everything so flat that the Earth's crust is still recovering from it. The Earth breathes sighs of relief, causing Estonia to grow a full 2 millimeters a year as the land rises up from the sea. On the island's highest mountain, a full 67 meters high, stands one of the world's oldest still operative lighthouses, 500 years old, built in the golden age of the Hansa. The structure itself is 36 meters tall. Plus the altitude, that's 103 meters above sea level, the highest lighthouse beacon in the Baltic region, visible from a distance of over 36 kilometers. Back on the mainland, the Baltic Sea, a former inland sea, now semi-enclosed, isn't very deep or salty. But even in summer, its waters are often no warmer than 12 degrees Celsius, making the flat coastal shallows where the water warms up quickly in the sun all the more sought after. Back in the capital, Tallinn, the quiz rally walkers are just reaching the end of the course. The last task. Calculate the number of years between Estonia's first appearance on a world map and Estonia's 500th Jubilee year celebrations. Help is at hand, or rather at foot, in a timeline plaque on the ground, showing key events in Estonian history. For example, 1991, the year Estonia regained independence after the fall of the USSR. And in the year 2418, the nation will celebrate its 500th birthday. That's 1,264 years after Estonia's first mention on a map. One more last question for the other team, now on Tinga Street. Tinga is shoe in Estonian. This task is reserved for a man who wears size 9 shoes. How many steps can you take from Tinga Street 7 to Tinga Street 10, wall to wall?
10 von Wand zu Wand machen. So 29 hätte ich gezählt gehabt.
29.
Yay.
Correct. At the end, the game master calls all the candidates back together. On his tablet, he's not only monitored the results, with GPS tracking, he's also followed the players' every move. It is also the end of a working day for robotics researcher Asko Ristolainen. He meets up with fellow enthusiasts in a gymnasium. In Estonia, the digital natives of all people are keeping the folk dance heritage alive. Our traditions are something we still follow. They're part of our lives. Folk dance and folk song. Traditions mean a lot to us. They're part of our daily life, our customs and our culture. Wrapping the belts has always been man's work.
So they're very narrow in here.
It's a good way to relax, especially after a long day immersed in technology. On the edge of town, at the pier. All aboard, we're ready for departure. After their shore leave excursions in Estonia, passengers wait to watch the usual evening's entertainment, casting off. The liner quickly picks up speed. Seas are fairly calm. The swell is modest. No rolling, no lurching, not even a mild pitching to unsettle passengers. Some refresh themselves from the exertions of shore leave in the wellness area, relaxing even without juniper twigs and birch champagne. They would make up for that later with a glass of bubbly at the ship's bar at the stern. While passengers enjoyed the end of an exciting day, the crew was just gearing up for the next shift. Their after-work refreshment was still a long way off. Cleaning crews swarm out as every night. On the quarterdeck, the hatches are battened down. Time for bed. Meanwhile, in the galley, the next day begins. The baker prepares bread rolls and croissants for breakfast. All is now quiet along the railing. But the team at the helm has to be wide awake 24/7. 3 teams take turns working 4-hour shifts on the bridge. The stint from midnight to 4 a.m. is the most taxing, the graveyard shift. But then, here in the Nordic summer, the sun rises early, and the ship sets course for our next destination, onwards to Latvia.